We appreciate that. Today we're going to start kind of a new chapter in AGMs where we're using education as our focus. And I think it's a member-driven thing. This is what people want, and so that's what we are delivering. Today we have a forum of people that are going to be talking and giving some perspectives. There's also pieces of paper on the tables that they will be taking audience questions. So please write down questions that you may have as you listen, and they will answer those to the best of their abilities. With that, I'm going to turn over this mic to this august group, and they will start their presentation. They're going to do their own introductions as to who they are, by the way.
Okay, my name is Danny Collins, and I'm supposed to be the one who's asking the really smart questions.
You got to hold that mic really close to your mouth.
But I'm pretty sure that you guys have even smarter questions. So if you need to help me so that we can get the most out of these three people. So the first question is who you are, where you're from, about your farm, how you got into Dexter's, and why you got into Dexter's. So and I'll just hand over the mic here. I'm going to pass the first question.
You're going to pass the first question?
Confuses me. I'm Stephanie Millman. I've been breeding for 14, 15 years. I got into Dexter's by accident. Had a friend that was doing cattle, said, you need to do cattle, it's fun. I had done horses for 23 years. I said, okay. So I found these little Dexters online, but not in Washington State, where I'm at, right in the middle of Western Washington. They were down in Southern California. And I started with a little bull and two heifers. We picked up out of Elko, Nevada. We all have this story. Brought them home in the back of my Frontier pickup with a canopy. As they're going down the highway, people are thinking it's dogs in the back until they hung their head out. They became the too good to be true little cow, and they honestly are. They truly are the too good to be true little cow. They are. Their beef is great. Their milk is great. They're fun to raise. They're fun to watch. They're fun to breed. They're easy to breed. They're quite hardy. I show. And I've shown them since I've had them. So showing to me is a real learning experience because there's someone else's opinion out there giving you the right and wrong, and it's a lot easier not to become barn blind. And you don't always get your best information on the internet, although people might argue that. But you need to get out there and get your hands on to really learn. That's basically what I am. I do beef, I show, I do draft work, and I milk and I make product. So I do it all. No.
I'm Jeff Chambers. My family and I, can you hear me? Is it close enough? We started with Dexter's in 2000, so going on 18, 19 years. We have a small farm in southeast Nebraska, 70 acres, so we don't have a lot of room for a lot of cattle. We were thinking about getting some cattle, and for some reason, I don't know if it's me or Melinda, we always want things that serve more than one function. We hate single function things. So we have dual purpose chickens. Everything we have is either triple, dual, or we make it do something that is not its primary focus. But we wanted a dual purpose cow. And back when we were looking at in the late 90s, trying to find the right dual purpose cow for our small farm in southeast Nebraska, we had the choice of some milking shorthorns that are the size of Holsteins, and they don't even call themselves dual purpose anymore. They're strictly a beef breed. You can find some milking shorthorns, I guess, back east. And other than that, there was 4 or 5 herds of Devons. very much far and fewer between than they are now. And there was a Smiling Papa Johnson down here in southwestern Kansas was available. There were a few other herds, so we had to go clear down to the Boot Heel of Missouri and picked up our first bull and two heifers, and away we went. So again, our purpose in raising Dexters is their dual purpose function. We want something that's going to give us great beef, and then we also want to be able to milk our Dexters to effect, but not have too much milk and not have to pour the feed into them to get that milk. So we really want a homestead cow, and we had no intention of ever being breeders, or certainly being on a breeders panel. That was the farthest thing for many of us. But at that time, breeding stock, as I just mentioned, was few and far between. So shortly after we got ours, people were calling us asking us if we had anything available. We said, no, we don't do that. But then we started showing, and we like Stephanie said, we started showing not because, showing's fun. What's that? No, you're not going. Stephanie's not going to win. But showing is a way to us to show our breeding to other people, and it's also a way to advertise the breed. And then it's also our family vacations. So I feel like I'm the street man. So I think I've answered most of the question there. That's why we got into Dexters. Again, we don't have a lot of room. We wanted something that was multi-purpose. We use the beef, we use the milk. We show to promote our breeding and to promote the breed. And we have a lot of fun. Our lives are consumed by our Dexters at home. I don't know what our farm would be like now if we didn't have capital. So we would have time, we would have money.
Okay. Am I good? All right. Starting off, I certainly would like to thank Danny and the rest of the planning committee and the association administration for asking me to come and sit on this panel, since I'm so new with this. Hopefully I'll be able to offer something that y'all can take home and kind of think about in your programs, and I'm hoping to learn from you all, since most of y'all probably have more experience with Dexter Cattle than I do. My name is Richard Browning, and I'm an animal science professor at Tennessee State University, and we've been running Dexter Cattle at the university for about 3 years now. It'll be 3 years probably the next week or so. And the reason why we got into Dexter Cattle was the result of an administrative decision at the university. We were doing beef cattle research back in the late 90s, 2000, 2001, and then an administrative decision was made to do something different. And so we got into meat goats. And we've been doing meat goat research for about the last 15, 16 years or so, evaluating different breeds, and I think we've made a bit of an impact on the meat goat industry in terms of genetic management, breed selection, performance recording, those types of things. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, a different administration came in, and they made another decision that they wanted to get back into cattle. And one of the reasons why we wanted to get back into cattle was because a lot of our students have an interest in going to vet school, and we want the students to have exposure to something other than non-traditional livestock, such as beef goats. And so we decided to get back into cattle, which I was kind of questioning whether we were going to get out of goats like we got out of cattle before. But we had 50 acres to work with, and so I just decided that we're going to do something small and something different. And going in, looking at some of the options in terms of smaller breeds that we can work with, Dexter was one that kept coming up in some of my investigations in terms of what breeds we may want to look at. So the decision was made, let's go with Dexter Cattle. And right at the time when we were getting ready to start putting the herd together, one of the local producers was getting ready to disperse their herd. It was about 30, 40 miles from us, so it was really perfect. So we started the herd off with 20 cows, went out and bought a couple bulls here and there, and we've just been growing the herd ever since. Our primary focus is really looking at these animals for beef production in small-scale production systems, because that's one of the reasons why we got into meat goats, because it's something that really fits a small farm operation. And I believe that the Dexter cattle have a similar role that they can play in small farm livestock production, particularly in terms of meat animal production. And so for the last 3 years, again, we've been building the herd, adding bulls and cows here and there, and the students are really enjoying the animals. Most of our students do not have any experience working with livestock, and so these animals are not intimidating to the students. The cattle also work well with our ongoing meat goat research. They're very complementary in terms of management, and at the same time, we will be able to do some research that is applicable not only to Dexter cattle producers, but cattle producers in general, because physiologically there's not that much difference between a Dexter cow and another cow, just on a smaller scale. And so we're able to get more experimental units on our now, we're running these cattle on 2 farms, about 140, 150 acres, so we get more experimental units using Dexter cattle than we could with your typical commercial breed of animal. And that's why we've gotten into Dexter cattle. And I think one of the other interesting aspects about it, like when we got into the meat goats, we were the only institution in the country that was doing meat goat research with multiple breeds. And from my understanding, we may be one of the few, if not the only, research institution in the country that's using Dexter cattle as our research model for beef cattle or for cattle research in general.
Somebody starts out. What do you think, what kind of facilities should be in place? What did you have? What did you figure out? What was not needed? What was absolutely necessary? How do you keep your Dexters? And just how do you maintain them in your area? Fencing, structures?
Well, I'll start because I would hazard, we haven't talked about this, but I hazard a guess that in terms of infrastructure, our farm, we're so infrastructure poor. Won't be a shock to some of you that have been there, but we don't even have a squeeze chute. We've never had a squeeze chute in 18 years.
And you can use you can simply put a gate on hinges into a nice big solid post and squeeze them against a wall.
Yeah, and that's typically what, if there's something that we really need a squeeze chute for, I mean, we raise horn and we dehorn, but we don't dehorn ourselves. Obviously, if you were dehorning yourselves, you want something like that. But again, it gets back to why we got into this breed specifically. We got into this breed specifically because we didn't want all the high inputs. We weren't, a commercial cattle breed. We were doing this for our house, our home, our family, and that's why we selected the breed. So in terms of infrastructure beyond that, our infrastructure is really low for anyone that would see, oh, you raise cattle, well, where's all your stuff? Well, this is it. But infrastructure we don't skimp on, and I think we've learned over the years that you have to have, and I mean just incredibly developed, is your exterior fencing should be the best you could possibly have. I would not skimp on your perimeter fencing. Also, if you're doing a rotational grazing or any interior, rotational grazing type, the use of some of your financial resources to develop that in terms of watering, in terms of movement of animals from one paddock to another, in terms of that internal fencing, that's another great infrastructure piece that I think is critical, particularly for Dexters, because I think many of us do rotational grazing types of things. The other thing, and I don't know if it's an infrastructure thing, but many of the people I see here are very old time. You're not old, you're old time breeders. Just out of curiosity, how many have had Dexters for less than 5 years? So the majority of you have as much, I mean, there's many faces I see that should be up here saying these stuff as well. Another area that I would develop from day one is make sure you have a very congenial, a very trusting, and a very working relationship with a local large animal veterinarian. That's just having that relationship in place where they know that when you call, it's not that nutty person with the Dexters, it's that nutty person with the Dexters that's serious about it and knows what they're talking about, and they take you seriously, and and develop that relationship. I know many of you already know this, but having that relationship is an incredible part of being a good steward of your herd. So fence, if you live in an inclement place, somewhere they can get out of the weather, a place you can handle your cattle, not necessarily having all the fancy squeeze chutes, but you need to be able to handle your cattle in some fashion, and a relationship with your veterinarian.
I can't add much more to that. I really, even with our meat goats, we really reach low-cost production, including infrastructure. Certainly that exterior fence is going to be important. And if you've run goats, you know the importance of exterior fencing. So we had a lot of that in place when we brought the cattle in. Exterior fencing is certainly important. Now we do have 2 or 3 workstations, because a lot of what we're doing is data collection. We're doing blood sampling, palpating, what have you. And so we have 2 or 3 covered working facilities, but we don't have any barns on the place. That's something that even we had meat goat producers come in, the first thing they notice, you don't have a barn out here. The cattle are going to be doing, whether just with the goats, whether it's calving, raising the kids, wintering, being in Middle Tennessee. Our winters aren't so harsh that they need to be brought in for the summer or for the winter time. We do have open sheds, they have access to trees, and so they do have ability to get out of the weather when need be. But most of what we expect these cattle to be able to do is perform like we did with our meat goats. We expect them to perform out on pasture. Having those calves, raising those calves to weaning. We do very little feeding, so we don't have creek feeding stations out. We don't have dry life areas where we maintain animals. Everything that these animals are going to be expected to do is going to be out on pasture. Having a good relationship with a vet is certainly going to be important. But a lot of what we do, what we visit with producers about, and a lot of what we're doing, we piggyback off what we were visiting with meat goat producers about, is you want to be able to have these animals perform with very little input. Because it doesn't take, if you're buying a couple of squeeze chutes or a couple of creek feeders to really have your costs go up to the point where those animals are not able to show you a return on your investment. And so whatever we do infrastructure, it needs to be functional, but it also has to be something that's not going to shoot any chance of profit that you have out the window.
Exterior fencing, just some specifics on that. Keep in mind that baby Dexters are little, and it's pretty easy for them to slip under fencing. So you want that bottom board to be low enough, or you want no-climb fencing down near the bottom. If a predator can't get in, and I'm talking neighbor dogs or foxes or whatever, not big stuff, Robin. If a predator can't get in, your Dexters aren't going to get out, especially those little ones. They can slip under fences quite easily. And as far as structure goes, 3 sides and a roof. They've got to have 3 sides and a roof, and they have to have a comfortable place to lay down and chew their cud, because they're going to lose weight and they're not going to be happy if they can't lay down and chew their cud. So that would be the most important infrastructure stuff that you would want, that exterior fencing and a 3 sides and a roof, somewhere nice and clean where they can lay down and relax.
Do you feed anything extra, or is it all on grass? Do your Dexters, are they just out? And then later when you bring them to the processor or whatever, do you finish on grain? Or do you use all grass fed?
All grass.
Mine are fed year round. We feed grass year-round, grass hay, protein tubs. And then depending on what we're expecting out of them, if we're expecting to milk them, or if we're expecting them to raise a calf. Wet conditions are very, very hard on cattle because they're, I would take the cold dry over that wet any day because their hides are made to fluff up and insulate, and it can't do that in the wet, so it's pretty miserable. And if you look, if anyone gives Multimin 90, it's a mineral shot, you'll see on there that it says in wet conditions you give it more often because it just sucks, it takes everything out of them. So yeah, I feed year-round, and if I'm showing, I feed differently. If I'm milking, I feed differently. I don't finish off my steers. I have no need to finish off my steers. My Dexters get big and fat, no problem. But showing, you want them extra fat. Not just working. There's a difference between your working Dexter and your home Dexter and your show Dexter. There really is. So for me, feed goes. It also has to go for heifers. Heifers need more food to grow. When the temperature drops, they need higher protein. Everything needs higher protein when the temperature drops.
How do you add that?
How do I add that? Grains, mineral tubs.
Grains, mineral tubs.
Yeah. Don't let them waste their feed. That's a big one. Try to find a way to keep their feet up and dry. They're honestly pickier than horses, and they do love to sleep in their food. So try to have some kind of feeder. And baby heifers need more food. First time heifers need more food. And baby bulls, the first winter off a mom, baby bulls are not as tough as you think, and they need extra care, for sure.
Yeah, we do, and part of this is going to depend upon your location, like, and how much grazing area you have. But typically for us, we have our pasture cows, our mama cows, we have as a group, and they come in from pasture in November, early December if we're lucky, and the grass has grown a long time, and we're feeding them round bales from that of grass, high quality grass, or sometimes alfalfa when we have it, because we have an alfalfa field. From November, mid-November through, depending on when the grass greens up, in April, late April, in our area. But so for that period of time, our mama cow herd is basically in a, not a sacrifice area, but a larger area where we feed winter hay. We then turn them out when the grass greens up and it's a sufficient height in late April, early May, and we start our mama cow herd in a rotation through some fairly small paddocks. That's the only supplement. We do put out protein tubs in the winter. We put out protein tubs, I think they're 16%, the hard lick.
What about salt and stuff and minerals?
Yeah, we do have salt and particularly minerals available, but the only additional, you were talking about protein, the only additional protein we have in the winter beyond the hay are those protein licks. So that's how we manage our cow herd, our mama cow herd. There are differences for like the show string that you bring in and you're separating, and we're feeding them occasionally. Depends on when the show is, but in terms of the timing of starting that feeding, we're feeding them once or twice a day from the time we start until the show. But the other thing I wanted to point out was, in terms of taking care of baby bulls and heifers, what we found, and I think it's important to share related to nutrition and management, is when you're weaning your calves, whether that's in the fall or in the spring, don't just wean them. Put them in whatever pen you're going to wean them in, or however you're weaning, if it's across the fence. Give them a little bit of hay or access to pasture. If you're not absolutely opposed to giving supplemental protein, I would strongly encourage you to supplement those weanlings' diets during the weaning process. So we wean typically November at 6 to 7 months, and then we're what we call background feeding those weanlings, both the bulls and steers and the heifers, basically almost through till the next spring. We're backgrounding almost half the year. And then we'll turn the steers out with the pasture cows, and then we have a separate place to put any bulls. But I think that's very important. Don't just expect to pull a calf off a mama at 6, 7, 8 months if they're a bull, like Stephanie was saying. And I've heard lots of people say, for bull calves, if you're going to keep it as a bull calf, if you're expecting it to be a herd sire, try to keep it on the mama nursing up to 8 months. But if you can't do that, don't just pull them off and then expect them to thrive and develop with on the same nutritional stuff that you're giving your mature cow herd. It just doesn't work. They will suffer in the long term. They'll never develop as well as they would otherwise. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, our mature cows are managed, fairly similar to has already been stated. The mature cows run on pasture year round. They will go on hay. Depends on when that fall forage kind of runs out. Somewhere November, December. They'll stay on hay for 90 to maybe 120 days. Depends on when the green spring up is. The heifers that we're developing, we will feed them whole cotton seed in the wintertime. I try to avoid buying commercial feeds as much as possible. Try to use byproduct feed. So any heifers that are being developed, they'll be on whole cotton seed. The only animals that we will typically put on a commercial feed will be the bulls, because we don't want to feed cotton seed to bulls because infertility. Steers that we have, they'll be on cotton seed until we get them sold. Hopefully they'll have all those sold before the next spring rolls around. But the bulls, because we have a half dozen bulls right now, they're in individual pens, so we do keep them on pelleted feed year round. That's the only thing that we feed year round are the bulls. But the cows, this past year, they received no supplement other than just the hay that we provided. And in that case, you want to monitor the body condition of these cows. We have a spring calving herd. And so those cows are going into the wintertime in mid-gestation. Nutrient requirements shouldn't be all that high, but they are pregnant, so you do want to watch the body condition. If you see them losing body condition, then you have to go in and add something else. We may add something else, but the last couple of years, the cows maintain good body condition on just the hay that we're providing. It's just a orchard grass fescue mixed hay that we feed the cattle. And so if we can keep them on forward and they're not losing condition, we won't supplement them with anything else other than that.
So what else do you provide? And what else, I'm just thinking things like fly control, vaccinations, anything else that you provide for their comfort, for their health, practices with vaccinations. How much of a stickler are you for vaccinations, or would you say, oh, vaccines don't need to be done? There are several schools of thought about it. Oh, I have a closed herd, I don't need to vaccinate, for example. You hear that fairly often. How would you approach that, or how do you approach that?
You're reading my notes.
I know. You've got good notes.
Okay, extras. Salt all the time. Loose minerals, some kind of minerals are so important. Sometimes added fat. Vaccinations, I show, so my entire herd gets vaccinated. Even my old ones that never leave the property. With that said, when I come home from a show, they are in a quarantine pen for 2 weeks. I have a pen set up on my property, and there is no nose-to-nose touching, as far away as they can be from the rest of the herd completely. 2 weeks, and if I don't see symptoms, then I go 1 week longer and integrate them back in with the herd. Everything gets vaccinated, everything gets wormed. There are 3 different types of wormers, 3 different types. There's all kinds of brands, 3 different types. There's injectables, there's pour-ons, there's feed. I use all 3. You can rotate them if you want.
Do you run feeds?
No, I run nothing. I run.
You have your vet work.
No,
Nothing?
no.
You just
They're healthy. You're going to know if you have a healthy cow or not. If you have a cow that's starting to drop weight, lose body condition, pay attention to your animals. Get off the computer. I'm a bad one for this, you guys. You're never going to see me on Facebook. Get off the computer and go out there and brush your cow. Take its dead hair off.
The question
Milk
was,
it,
do you run
pet it,
fecals?
and take a look at it. You can tell by body condition whether you've got a healthy animal or not.
but I'm just.
So, yeah, we provide salt and minerals depending on the season. I mean, we in terms of fly control, we actually use some of the fly control minerals during the summer and the spring. We think that helps some. What's that? Oh, no, we haven't had much luck with like the rubbers and such.
Well, you have 5 kids.
No, but I don't know why. We've tried them. They just don't seem to use them.
Some of them play with them and some of them don't. You can have the powders hanging off of a rope. Really? Maybe. And some of them feed on it.
So for fly control, we typically try to use. We've used some parasite stuff, and that seems to have some effect. But you know, it's hard telling. The seasons vary so much. I know Patty here is a master at fly control. I've seen some of her. I've seen some of her contraptions and ideas. So when we open this up, we'll have to get Patty's input on fly control. What was the rest of it? Vaccinations. Oh yeah, we vaccinate. We don't vaccinate. It's good to vaccinate because you show. We vaccinate because we think it's the right thing to do, and it's going to maintain our herd health. And secondarily, it's our veterinarian, who we have that good relationship with, tells us we should. So we follow his advice. And we've seen, and we've heard stories, and we've seen stories. I don't vaccinate, you know. Just up the road, we used a Dexter bull to breed a commercial for a 4-H kid, and they didn't vaccinate, and the offspring keeled over one day with blackleg. Great. So that's not something. I mean, it's great. It may never happen to you if you don't vaccinate, but why? It's so inexpensive.
Prevention.
Yes, one thing that's interesting about starting a new herd is you're working through things, and we're just completing our 3rd year, and so we're still kind of working through some of the parasite control protocols in terms of fly control. The first year we used the back rubs. They worked really nice. The second year we used the fly tags. This year we're probably going to go back to back rubs for the cow herd and use fly tags for the bulls. We had a real odd spring, if you can say we had a spring in Middle Tennessee. And the flies just got all over us before we could even plan our fly tagging protocol. So we're probably going with back rubs for the cow herd. Vaccinating, we do the Covaxin 8 or the Cavalry 9, and we use Cattle Master or something similar to that with the Vibrio and Lepto for the breeding herds. We try to vaccinate all the cows and the bulls. 30 days before the bulls are put out, calves are vaccinated at weaning. Again, with a Covaxin or a Cavalry 9, and we'll use a different vaccine in terms of the respiratory diseases on those calves when we wean them. Back to minerals, back to nutrition. Minerals are out at all times. Of course, in the spring we use the high mag, and then we go back to a regular cattle mineral as we get into summer and moving forward. One thing about nutrition, though, is you can have a plan in place, like tell producers, is that whether it's flies, whether it's nutrition, we're seeing this with the cattle. We certainly see it with the goats. Every year is different. So whatever you did last year nutritional-wise may be totally fine for this year, or may be different. Because every production year is different. The thing I love to tell the goat producers that no 2 years are exactly alike. unless you're raising your animals in a nice air-conditioned environment like swine producers or poultry producers, every year it's going to be a little wetter, it's going to be a little drier, a little colder, a little hotter. And so you might have a set plan in place, but be ready to modify it, because every year is a little different. Whether it's your nutritional program, whether it's your internal parasite control, your external parasite control, whatever it is, monitoring the herd on a regular basis is important. We don't show any cattle, so we don't have any that we go out there and brush and haul them and walk them up to a barn and treat. But we do, try to, teach the students to know their animals. We've got 60 cows out there, know all 60 cows, know when something doesn't look right with one, whether it's during calving season and a cow, like she's been in labor a little bit longer than she needs. So can we handle it? Do we need to get a vet in to help out during the breeding season? Watch, if you've got cows out there, they've got heifers, watch the heifer calves. We have an issue with heifers coming in the heat that we need to deal with. Observation is key. And whatever kind of management situation you're in, with your herd, always know your animals. And always be sure to check your minerals. You put minerals out, all of a sudden for a stretch of time, they may start going through minerals at a higher rate than normal. You go out there, your mineral feeder's empty. It might have been empty for a few days because you didn't bother to check it. Because I put a bag out, a couple of weeks ago, and they usually take some, maybe 3 or 4 weeks to go through it, and all of a sudden I go out, this mineral feeder's empty. And because they increased the mineral consumption, maybe some seasonal effect or something's gone on. So always observe, and that's what we try to teach our students to do with the herd, is observe everything that's going on in the herd. So yeah, we vaccinate. Our herd producers, they don't vaccinate because it's a closed herd, but we vaccinate. I think it's a good practice. Whether you're showing or not showing, we don't show anything. Minerals. Make sure you've got good clean source of water. We have a couple of water sources for the animals. We have a source of surface water that we pipe into the animals. We have municipal water if need be. And that's important, not only in the summertime but also in the wintertime. When you lose a water supply because of busted pipes in the winter, you have another source of water. So we have 2 sources of water for the animals. And those are the things that we do outside of just basic nutrition and general management. And some of that goes back to infrastructure. You have infrastructure if you lose your source of water for one reason or another. Those get into emergency situations, drought conditions perhaps. You have an alternative source of water for your animals. So those things that you should think about, moving forward. That's something that we think about. We've done this with our first go around with cattle, with the goats, and sort of with the Dexter cattle as well. Think about planning ahead.
So now going into the cattle themselves, what makes a good Dexter for you? What is really important? What would you tell newcomers to the breed? What you've been trying to focus on? What is negligible? Just what are qualities that you're looking for in your bulls, in your replacement heifers? What do you use them for? In terms of milk production or not? Yeah, I think that's about it. And yeah, and how is your client base? What is your specific client base? Is it the homesteader? Do you sell beef by the package? Because that also concerns how you choose the heifers and the bulls that you keep.
Structural would be first. You got to have good legs. You got to have good feet. You've got to have strong udder structure. Disposition is huge for me. This is my opinion. This is my opinion. I want a foot I want a long, thick loin. I want depth. I want strong udder structure, disposition. That will get you off the property, number one. And if you're lacking in any of those categories, you better have something really good to stay on. So there better be something more to offer. Those things, in my opinion, take the longest to breed for. The longest to breed for. Udders are so hard, and you're not going to do it in one generation. Disposition, you are not going to do in one generation. Feet, legs, you're not going to do these in one generation. It does not happen. PHA, chondrodysplasia, A2, polled, horned, color, that's one breeding. That is not that important. That's one breeding. Your most important thing is the soundness of your cow, and then what you're going to do with her. If you're not going to milk her, perhaps you don't care if she has an udder that's hanging out the back end and is massive. She doesn't need to give 3 to 6 gallons of milk a day because you're not going to be milking her. However, if she doesn't have good udder structure, she can't even raise a beef baby for you because her udder is smacking between her legs. And now you got mastitis problems, or she's stepping on teats and ripping them off. It's still important. And when people come to me and they say, I don't want a show cow, I just want a good cow. And I say, well, but wait. What are they judged on in the ring? In the ring, they're judged on what they're going to put on your table and in your freezer, and how long they can do that for in their lives. This past year has been kind of rough on Emerald Park because we have lost 5 or 6 of our main herd that I started with. They were 18 and 19 years old, and that was the end of their productive life, including my herd bull Frederick. He's now gone. Probably one of the most influential breeding bulls in the breed, because he was basically the first bull to have a hip. He had a lot to offer. Disposition. Everything I was looking for. I'm giving up my last one this year, and that's Saltaire Susie. She's 19, and she's going to go on. Actually, she's going to go on to a new home. But Hillview, Evelyn Anderson started. Patty, when?
1980, would have been in the 80s.
And Evelyn Anderson was Hillview, and she was in her 80s and 90s, and she came from Angus, therefore had a lot of cattle knowledge. She was one of the first to start AIing Dexters and brought in English bloodlines along with Carol, who came in later. And it was Evelyn who I started my herd with, the Hillview herd, and she was big on structure. We had great cows here in the U.S. A lot of the English bulls brought in some issues with feet and udder structure, and then there was a whole wave of non-Dexters, almost to the point of extinction, I believe. And then people started getting into them again. But the people that get into Dexter cattle, for the most part, you're going to find, are not cattle knowledgeable people. They are people that want a pet. They're people that want something to eat on the golf course. Oh, we really want a steer, but I don't think we're going to be able to eat him. They end up getting a cow and a bull, and they end up breeding them, and then they can never castrate anything because little Johnny's so cute. But this happened for how many years? And the breed tanked, folks. The breed tanked, and undoing is hard. Very, very hard. And that's where we're at now, is undoing. So personally for me, I breed for anything that takes years to do. And disposition, udder structure, foot structure, leg structure takes years to do. And anything that I can do in one generation, I don't even care about. It doesn't hit my books. A2, color, horned, chondro, PHA. That is so backdoor for me because that's easily fixed in one generation.
I'm going to applaud.
I don't know how I follow that up.
Amen.
Yeah, pick the mic. Okay. So I agree with almost all that. So I don't have anything to say. I agree that our purpose is we definitely want a functional animal. How do you define a functional animal? Well, a functional animal is one that meets the requirements of why you're keeping these. They're great, they're pets, but how many 800, 900 pound pets can you have without some return from them? And so we want a functional animal based and function defined as what Stephanie was just talking about in terms of structure. It has to be able to produce its intended function on our farm. It has to be able to provide us with a certain quantity of beef, offspring that will produce that certain quantity of beef, do it on a very low plane of inputs. And if we choose to, also, that dam should be able to provide us with a sufficient quantity of dairy products for our household and others. That's basically what we're trying to do with our herd. And to do that with our herd, we're using all the tools and techniques that cattle breeders have used forever in terms of defining what is a good, functional, structurally correct cow that will last a long time. There are many tools to do that. I'm going to promote the linear classification tool that the ADCA has had. That's a very good tool for you to use in determining what you have in your herd, how you can move your herd forward, and what you need to correct in your herd to make it better. I agree. There are many traits, the traits that Stephanie was talking about that take a long time to fix, correct, improve upon are those that are either they have many, many genes that are impacting them. It's not just like a color gene that's going to be on or off. There are many things that are doing that. Some of it can be hidden. This cow may have a pretty good udder, but she may be carrying some genes that mixed with this bull over here are not going to produce that same udder. That's what takes a long time. Getting homozygous on those genes is what will make an excellent herd and breed. In terms of market, we market our cows, those we sell as breeding stock, as exactly what we're trying to do for our own herd. For our own personal herd, we want it to be able, like I said, produce that beef, produce that dairy product, and to do it on a low plane of inputs and not overwhelm us. So that's our market. It's both a homestead market. We sell quite a few people that want to milk. I couldn't agree more with Stephanie saying I don't need a show quality cow, because what that's telling me is I don't really care how good my cow is. I mean, it's not saying that showing defines quality. It's saying that the things that are looked at in people that show cattle are things that make good cattle. And that if you choose not to show, that doesn't mean you can't have good cattle. That's not what I'm saying at all. And then we sell quite a few to other breeders, and that's our market. And we do, in terms of beef production, we sell all our weanling steers as basically weanling steers or bulls to other folks in the operation. We finish our beef for our household and our family primarily.
When I get to discussing traits and what we look for, I always like to start with in this case, talking about cattle, talking about the cow herd, because it's the cow herd that's going to determine whether or not you make money or lose money. If profit is one of your objectives. I know some folks are doing it just for fun and games, and they don't care whether they make money out of it. When I speak with producers, I make the assumption that they're trying to make a little bit of money. If they put $1 in, they hope to get $1 and a dime out of this operation. And so for me, I start with the cow herd, and trait number one, above all else, is she weaning a calf on an annual basis? Pretty is fine, but productive is what's going to make you money. And so when we evaluate the cow herd, we want to know, is this cow raising a calf on an annual basis? Every 365 days or so, is she raising a calf? And that's our primary trait we look at. And then after that, you know, then we may start looking at some of the structural issues. If we're looking at our bulls, you know, we're using our bulls to improve the herd, and if you're trying to improve udder structure or leg structure or whatever trait it is that you're trying to improve upon, you're going to use your bulls to do that. Those cows, their job is to get pregnant, raise that calf every 12 months, and that's what we're looking at. We've had cows with really pretty udders, but they wouldn't raise their calves. We've had cows that have some really jacked up looking udders, and they raise some of the nicest calves that we've had. You know, if we're selling market still. And all of our bull calves up to date, we banded every one of them and sold them all for slaughter steers. And we've been fortunate that we've been able to sell all of our steers, you know, within 2 to 3, 4 months of weaning them. They're off the place, and we're ready for the next calf crop. And so we talk about what traits should we be looking at. Certainly those fitness traits, which are reproductive performance, the ability of these animals to stay healthy, maintain body condition without an awful lot of inputs. If I have a cow that I'm constantly having to bring up to be medicated, or have to be on feed away from the rest of the herd, then she's probably not going to be a profitable cow breed, and so she probably has to go. And so think of that cow herd. Oftentimes, this with our goat producers, we put a lot of focus on bulls, calves, and steers, but money is going to be made or money is going to be lost on the quality of that cow. And her primary job is to raise a calf every year. If she doesn't do that, then you're running the risk of suffering a loss. It's hard enough to turn a profit on some of these cattle when prices are good and your reproductive performance is fine. And one thing I will say is that numerous economic analysis, when we look at the traits that are important in terms of profitability, we talk about growth traits, we talk about carcass, milk yield, what have you. Nothing. The nicest average daily gains, you can have the nicest milk yields. These cows aren't producing calves. All that's just for academic discussion only. So when somebody asks me what is the trait that's important for me, it's always reproductive performance in that cow. Trumps everything else that you can look at. Coat color, milk status, what have you. Nothing tops reproductive performance. Whether you're talking about a herd of 5 cows or a herd of 105.